Hi, this is Mike Hendrickson from OSCON 2014. I'm here with Denise Cooper. Denise, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So you've been in open source for about 60 years now?
Yeah, seems like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you're now at PayPal.
Yes.
And so can I ask you why you went to PayPal?
Well, I have a consultancy, Denese Works, that's been running since I left Wikimedia Foundation. And I was pretty successful. I mean, I was as busy as I wanted to be. And I was interviewing PayPal as my next potential client. I gave them some free consulting, like you do, for this project called Kraken. And the girl that was picking my brains was really great. She took a lot of notes, and then she went back to PayPal and did everything I told her to do, and they had a great outcome. So the next thing I know, they've decided that I would be a great person to run their open source, and I'm like, I don't need to do this. Wouldn't you rather have me come as a consultant? And they were pretty clear that they wanted to use it to make a fundamental transformation to the culture, and that the way to do that would be to create a real job, a real figurehead job, so that people would have somebody to look at and say, see, look, we're changing. So my job is to, without being too insensitive to the inside of PayPal, retain my external focus, look in at PayPal and say, wow, you guys really need to modernize in the following ways. And let me suggest movements that'll make that happen. Let me hire staff that'll keep that going. And then we'll talk about it outside and have people be aware. And actually the talking outside about it thing originally was going to be old-fashioned open source project advocacy, like you do.
Yeah.
But then they got interested in this inner source thing. And that is direct change of the culture, of the engineering culture, by breaking down the silos that have grown up around the individual code projects. So they have specialization now. And the idea is, let's get more people to know more about all the code, and so in a way build full stack engineers.
Right.
But let's create that empathy that we were hearing about this morning, among the teams. What happens now is, you're over here on this part of the stack, and there's some other part of the stack that you need help from. So you send a request or a bug issue track of some kind, and it just sits there because they've got their own stuff they've got to get done. They do spend a little time trying to be responsive to the outside, but everybody's responsible for their own little silo. And what we'd like to have happen is, I want to fix something, so I look at your code and I figure out where I think the fix is, and I send a pull request. And maybe if it's not perfect, you mentor it back to me and say, look, it needs to change in the following ways before we can say yes. So this team doesn't end up doing all the work, because the other thing that would happen is, if it was an important enough patch, they'd rewrite it, and that then they'd resent having their work derailed, and so we're trying to make it more like a big Apache inside.
So open source is actually, as a technology, being a catalyst for cultural and organizational change.
Exactly.
More than just the technology is great to use, but you're actually shifting an organization from what they used to do to something new.
Yeah. And I was just in the talk that Purnima gave for Jeff Harrell, who helped lead the Kraken project, was supposed to speak at OSCON today, but he broke his foot. And so we had to substitute in Purnima, who was his helper on the project. And she had never worked in this way before. She's an example of an engineer that got pulled into the project, and it looked interesting to her. She was interested in Node, but she had no idea they were going to work in an open source way. And she loved it.
When you say work in an open source way, do you mean more than trying to deploy Agile and Lean, but you're talking about pull, Git?
Yeah, I'm talking about making your code transparent, making it possible for other people in the company to treat your code just like an Apache project.
Yeah.
When you as an engineer want to learn about something in Apache, there's nothing stopping you from going and reading that code, reading the archive, figuring out what you need to figure out, sending a patch if you have a patch to send, working with a committer to get it committed, and getting that mentored in, eventually achieving committership on that project if you're interested enough. We'd like to see that. We want to judge people based on how much contribution to the overall company they're making, in addition to whatever it is that we hired them to work on. Because really, we're one big company. Our CEO John Donahoe has been talking about one company for a while now, because eBay and PayPal are two famous brands that are really the same company. And we've done so much acqui-hiring now that we're also Braintree and Venmo and StackMob and, Bill Me Later, lots of other companies. And unlike any other company I've ever worked for that does acquisition, we don't really subjugate those cultures. We want those people to be proud that they're working with eBay PayPal, but it's one company with a lot of different brands, kind of like an open source community where there are a lot of different projects. It's one, but we're all one community.
So you're also using other things though, because you're obviously your dev teams are working in a different way. So is DevOps going to help with that, like some of the lean and agile approach to, continuous deployment, to a lot of small iterations rather than one big product a year or two big products a year?
We definitely have made that shift as well. So you heard Kirsten this morning say, originally we had, previously we had like 1 or 2 product releases a year, and last year we did 58, and this year, just in the first half of the year, we've done 45, so presumably we'll make more than 58. That acceleration and being able to be responsive is the result of a lot of different changes. So shifting to a platform as service so that we can deploy stuff against a running platform instead of everything being the lift of the whole stack is part of it. Using pieces that are easy to learn, like Bill Scott talked about in the keynote. So it takes less time to ramp an engineer because they're well understood pieces is part of it. People don't talk about this much in open source, but pushing pieces out into one tree that's outside in open source projects like Node, our Node work with Kraken, people from the other companies that or entities that come and work on that project outside become people who know your stack and are potential employees that way. So, it's definitely something Google's been doing for a long time. And
so one thing that I've noticed too is wherever you go, you help share the story. Most enterprises, when they transition, do stuff, but they keep it to themselves, and because it's their secret sauce of transformation, but that doesn't help the larger community. So why do you do that?
Well, that's me. I mean, we've talked before. I was sort of constitutionally wired to be an open source person. I can't really help it. I want all the boats to rise. I don't see the point of trying to just advantage a single vertical.
So we all do better when we all do better?
We all do better when we all do better, and Tim taught us that, right?
Yep.
So you're right. I share everywhere I go, and I want to see as many people figure this stuff out as possible. These days people come to me because PayPal's making me visible again, and they say, I want to hire you, or how can I get your time? And I hand them other people's business cards because there are good open source consultants out there that can help your company get there. We are going to publish as much as we can about what we're doing. And PayPal does have some secret sauce. There is some stuff. It's not all going to go. There's some secret sauce. But we're going to try to get as much as we can out there to help other people, and for all the reasons, to help our engineers figure out that they're in a larger community of practice. It really helps with your code quality. If you know somebody's going to be looking at your code that might try to employ you down the road, it's going to be better code. It just is. We want people to be working with us because they really enjoy the process of working with us. And as you heard in the video, it didn't used to be all that much fun to try to get stuff done at PayPal. So we've been trying to change that as a culture since before I joined. But my piece is about transparency, and I think it's going to be surprising.
It makes sense that if companies are benefiting from open source, that they also then contribute back, whether it's the code that they've worked on or the story of their transformation or whatever it might be. I hope more companies start to do what you're doing.
Me too. I would actually love to see a craftsmanship practice grow up from companies that are trying to do this. Like, I would love to not be trying to figure this stuff out in a vacuum.
Well, there are a lot of companies doing it too. I mean, a lot of companies are. I don't know if we're going to call it a shift or transformation. Transformation might be scary for a lot of companies, so we probably have to find the right description.
Yeah, that you guys are good at that.
That doesn't scare people, but the whole idea of DevOps and lean and agile combined with full stack developer, and with design centric thinking, exactly,
and customer centric thinking. One of the great things about PayPal is they've got this be the customer focus that David Marcus brought in. So everybody has to go spend time in customer service now. Everybody.
Wow.
And I am now a natural ombudsman for people in the open source community that run afoul of the fraud detection stuff at PayPal. You know, all big banks have to run these programs that look for miscreants. And it has happened in the open source world that people's money's been frozen, and it's hard to figure out how to unfreeze it because, you know, in order to make your customer service scale, it's hard to get that individualized protection, you know. But for real open source projects that are having trouble and need some help, they can write to me, Denise at PayPal, and I will fix it.
Denise, this has been great. I can't wait to see where you guys are next year, and we'll enjoy working with you along the way.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks.